Today, our conversation will be focused on our newest course, which was supposed to make its big debut this summer, called Mental Health and Wellbeing in International Schools, a primer for school counselors. We are joined by Sean Mcelroy, who has spent the past year writing this new course, and he was scheduled to be teaching the course with us this summer. Sean has also written or taught many of the courses that we offer at the CTC, and I also just wanted to mention that Sean, he's currently the high school counselor at Kuala Lumpur. And what I wanted to mention about Sean is that earlier this school year, he received the Council of International Schools Peggy Templeton Strong Award, which honors members of the CIS guidance community who make a significant contribution to international school guidance. So we just feel really lucky to have Sean with us today. We are also very honored to have our other panel members with us. Two of our other panel members are also training center facilitators. One of them is Robin Harwood. Robin was also with us yesterday. She teaches our Solutions, the Heart of Counseling course, and she is currently the elementary counselor at the American Community School in Amman, Jordan. We also have Sue Easton with us, and Sue is the previous director of the Teacher Training Center programs, and she has taught many courses in all of the different programs that we offer. She's taught in the Counselors Training Center and our Teacher Leader Institutes and our Principals Training Center. Sue is currently working as the Director of Wellbeing and Learning at Ridley College in Canada. And then finally, we are really thrilled to have Dr. Ana Maria Leon joining us today. And Ana Maria is the elementary school counselor at Nido de Águilas in Santiago, Chile. And she has primarily been focusing on 4th and 5th grade students at Nido. Today, our panel is going to be discussing questions that were generated by people who were originally registered to take the Mental Health and Wellbeing course with us this summer. As you're listening to the panel discussion, we would encourage you to use the Q&A feature that you'll see at the bottom of the page. And if we don't get a chance to respond to one of your questions live as a panel, we will get a response to you offline. We'll be saving a transcript of all these questions. We also really wanted to encourage everyone to use the chat feature. So as you're listening to the panel discussion, if you've had a similar situation or experience or have a resource or a strategy that you'd like to recommend, please include them in the chat so that by the time we finish today's discussion, everybody will leave with a big set of tools and resources to help you in your practice. And with that, we will get started with our questions. As we're talking about mental health and well-being and the role of the counselor, we know that there's really two sort of main frameworks that counselors follow, and one is in that role of prevention, and then there's also the role of response, responding to needs of students who come to us. So we're going to start off with thinking about the prevention role. And the question that we would like our panelists to discuss is, how can we foster the creation of a prevention culture as opposed to simply just responding or reacting to emergencies? And Sue, in your role, which is really all about prevention, we're hoping you could start us off with some of your thinking around that question.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kristen. And just to be clear, I am not a counselor. My background is definitely teaching. And this role that I have, the Director of Wellbeing and Learning, in some schools, counselors actually take this role. But my role is solely the preventative part. And I'm at Ridley College, where our vision statement is to inspire flourishing lives to transform the globe, which that flourishing part is directly defined as PERMA-V, which comes from Dr. Martin Seligman, who is sort of the founder of positive psychology. And PERMA-V stands for positivity, engagement, relationships, meaning, and achievement. And the V is from Amelia Zivotevskaya from the Flourishing Center. It's vitality. And those 6 things are what we focus every decision that we make in the school, which means that we are really working on building well-being or flourishing all the time. How do we have practices in our lives so that that we can build positive emotions? How can we make sure that we're engaged? So when we just went through the past 3-4 months in isolation, many of our students talked to us about using the practices that they had learned so preventatively versus some of the issues which still come up, because we talk a lot about the mental health continuum, and our focus is on not the mental illness part, but our focus is on the mental wellness part, and how do we ensure that our community is flourishing. The mental illness part is definitely dealt with by our counselors, although I work very closely with them as well with the preventative part, so that we are really a team focused on creating this culture of flourishing or mental health. Start there.
Great. Robin.
Sean, you want to go?
Oh.
Go ahead, Sean.
Sure. At ISCAL, I just arrived this year, and I was very excited to see they have a program called Signs of Suicide. So every student in grade 8 and every student in grade 10 is trained to recognize signs of suicide. We also do a baseline assessment of all our students in grade 8 and 10 for any suicidal ideation. So we're getting out ahead, but we're also enrolling the kids themselves as being part of this. We also did an open training for teachers and parents to come along, really spreading the message that this is a community effort. So, we often talk about preventative like being something we do to people. This was super excited to see it being very organic about we're all in this together. We have a couple other things in that mental health domain. We're currently undergoing a revision of our social emotional learning curriculum and continuum from K to 12. So we'll be curious to kind of see where that goes. But I think the prevention is where big dividends pay off. But, it's on the other end. And, when Kristen and I were designing the course, it really was back and forth between, preventing and responding and how to bridge those two worlds.
Thanks, Sean. Robin?
Yeah, that's great. I think focusing on well-being for your students and your whole community is really key, and the opportunities for that are endless. Also, I think thinking about going back into school, to the school building after possibly being online, counselors can be sort of the reminder to take a pause and focus on what students might need coming in. So I think a lot of the adults are going to come into the building with the best intentions, but I think teachers will be worried about what's been missed, how do we catch up, and things like that. And so we can be that voice of let's take a pause and think about what students have been missing these past months. Play is going to be super important. Connection, unstructured time, easing in, becoming familiar with new routines, things like that. So I think when we talk about prevention, we can also remember to remind everyone in our building to just, take a moment and before we get into getting back to our standards and see what's needed.
Great. Anna Maria.
Yes, thank you. This is, I think prevention first, it's my passion. I think it's the most, it's a very important role as a counselor. It's a tier 1. And like Sue was saying about the emotional language, I think it doesn't matter, what program we use or what values we use. Just find something that has a common language for everyone. Because we can't be everywhere. So training, I see counselors as being the bridge between the administration, the teachers, the parents. So we can all make a big team and speak the same language everywhere. Because that takes you to what Robin was saying, when you do the intervention, and what Sean was saying, when you do the intervention, you have that common language already that you can use when you do that tier 2 or second intervention. I usually try to get involved as a prevention in their different areas, and I don't remember who talked about this last, I think it was Monday or Tuesday, but getting involved in leading the student council, because that's a great sample of kids to know what's happening, the temperature of the school. They can tell you, they're the ones who are going around with the other kids and students and teachers, so they can give you a feeling of where we can go with the programs. Service learning is a great also prevention strategy. And through service learning, I teach all the social emotional, like self-awareness and self-management and responsibility and relationship skills. So it's a great opportunity to get into, get involved together. It's a working, cooperating with the teachers and working together with them. Great strategy, and we know the teachers have different personalities. So I think when we do a prevention program, we need to know our teachers and the personalities that each one of them have, because going in like a service learning or a classroom guidance, it's going to be different in each class. And we need to adapt to them so we can get them on our side and they can help us build this prevention program together. Parent workshops, and we'll talk about resources later of some of the things I used. During this online process and the pandemic period, it was really hard to get to parents and teachers because of all the emails that were coming in. And at NIDO, we are going to continue online. So what I would recommend doing this prevention piece is that getting also together, building a team with a teacher so we can send videos or any information, newsletters to the parents through the teachers so they don't get so many emails. I could go on and on forever, so I'm going to stop now. We can talk later, or they can email me. No problem.
Sue, did you want to add some more thoughts?
Just really quick, just to kind of summarize, I think what we're all saying is it's a different year starting this year. And as counselors or in the role that I'm in, it's just really important that we plan ahead for August or whenever we're starting. So there definitely needs to be something, professional development, whatever you want to call it, for all of the new hires. And for students as well. And I like the talk about student council, but really every student needs to have as much information as possible about focusing on their own well-being. So those things, and Maria just talked about the fact that they would be remote. So thinking about right now, are there asynchronous as well as synchronous opportunities that we can give our new hires and our students as well? And just the last piece, and this comes from sort of the mecca of positive psychology, which is the basis of all that we do. Their 4 words are learn, live, teach, embed. Adults need to learn, then they need to live it so that the kids see that they're modeling it before they're teaching it and embedding it. And we're doing everything on the fly right now. So the more that we can get out to our communities, there are many of our adults, whether it's parents or our teachers, in addition to, like, we're starting to teach a summer course, and we had 15 kids sign up. It's called Flourishing 101. So getting things out to our community right now so that we are not just starting from scratch when we start back in August is really important.
Great, thanks, Sue. Sean, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to echo Sue's sentiment around it is really about everybody getting trained. Mark Brackett, who's the director of Emotional Intelligence Center at Yale, he originated one of the original social emotional curriculums about 30 years ago, and it really didn't go anywhere because it was a curriculum in a box. It was well thought out, but really everybody thought somebody else was doing it when the adults themselves weren't really grounded themselves. And, if you look at any quality meditation program, in order to be a trainer, you have to have been practicing for a year. So when you look at the social emotional learning side, we need to feed the adults in the building. We need to get them grounded. Over the course of the last several months, it's been really hard to kind of gauge how the adults are doing when you cannot see them. And many of them are really, Robin knows this, pulling double duty, because on the one hand, they're doing their job, but then they got a couple of rugrats that they're also supporting. And how do we bring them back in and help them navigate? I think that's the really interesting question. So be wary of, a simple box that you buy and implement. Be wary if the entire strategy of prevention is embedded in one person or the counseling office, because I think that's where it really doesn't take off.
Anna Maria?
I just wanted to add it to what Sean was saying. I think when we come back, either online or back to school, the teachers are going to be so stressed, and that program in the box might not come out. Social emotional, because they're going to be so worried about the academics. So anything as counselors that we can do for them, either through videos or through little quotes or little things that they can add that have it ready for them, I think it's going to be very helpful. I'm worried that because of all the things we missed, the social emotional learning is going to be like on backstage.
Mm-hmm. And I think that even though many of us are on vacation right now, everyone's really thinking about what is going to happen when the school year begins. People are wondering, are we going to be back in person? Are we going to be online? Is it going to be hybrid? What's it going to look like? And from the counseling perspective, there is a question that came in where somebody asked, I really want to be as prepared as possible to help our students and parents with their stress, anxiety, depression that students may be experiencing, as a result of the pandemic, or maybe not as a result of the pandemic. There were issues that were already there, and perhaps being isolated has exacerbated those issues. So the question is, what are some strategies that you might recommend, or things that counselors can do to help prepare for some of those mental health issues that we're anticipating we'll be experiencing when school begins again? And Anna Maria, do you want to start us off?
Yes, thank you. I think first, Robin talked about this on Monday about creating a survey for the students, because we don't know how they come. I was very surprised when the pandemic started, the online classes started and we have to be in our homes. We were very worried about the kids in the elementary school. And when I started talking to them, I started having meetings with the student council, I realized they were really happy, because for the first time they were spending time with their families.
Mm.
So Robin said about the survey, because then we'll know how they're feeling. Now it's been a long time, so we might start seeing some of that depression, stress as they come back, especially coming back to a new normal, which is very awkward. Many of our kids think they're going back to school, and they might be online. Many of our kids think they're going to go back to school the way it was before. So I would think creating a video or informing or training the teachers how this is going to look like when you come back, and be very concrete and get very prepared so they understand what the real normal is going to be. Especially the younger they are, the more concrete information they need. Also, expanding a little bit of what Robin said, survey for the parents too, and the teachers. So then we can build a program based on, are we going to do sessions about mindfulness? Are we going to do sessions on parent workshops, specific topics? I think through the parents and the teachers, we can get to every child, so train the teachers and the parents to look also for signs of depression and signs of anxiety. So look for those, so they know what to look for, because they're the ones with the kids all the time. Yeah. So I think starting with that, it would be a great resource. And also I think the cyberbullying training, because of all the time they had been online. I think we need to do a refresher on that.
Thank you, Anna Maria. Sue, and then Sean.
Talking about surveys, and we created a survey ourselves. I've got to tell you, not being an expert in creating surveys, it's definitely challenging to make sure that the results that you get back are meaningful. This is a resource, but it wasn't on my list, so I want to make sure that I do share it. We just started using the app called Flourishing at School. It's created by People Diagnostics. It is created 100% around that PERMA V that I talked about. So kids themselves get a visual representation of where they are strong in positive emotions versus negative emotions versus engagement, etc. And then the app immediately gives them suggestions for resources and activities that they could do to boost in areas that are areas of challenge. And then in the background, the counselors have an opportunity to look at those results and are there kids that they need to follow up with. So it's becoming part of our pastoral program that there's a specific process. It's one piece of data, but it's becoming an important one, and important on the other side to see which kids really are thriving with lots of positive emotions, feeling a sense of belonging, etc., so that we can programmatically make some decisions around that. So that's just one tool that I'd like to recommend.
Great, thanks, Sue. Sean.
And Anna Maria had highlighted the idea of educating people what the new normal will look like. Hong Kong International School has on their YouTube channel some videos of students who came back to school early to videotape, what seating arrangement would look like, what it would look like walking down the hallways, where all the hand dispensers are. It seems so trivial, but it was, again, the students sharing the story, but helping make it very concrete what it'll look like. So I applaud that sort of idea. And I echo Sue's sentiment around designing your survey carefully and well thought out, which in part means testing it out, share it with a couple friends, then get a small group of students, see if it really is gathering what you think it should be gathering. And keep in mind, if you're asking someone, on a scale of 1 to 10, how stressed are you? And they say 5, what does that mean? Is 5 their normal stress level? In which case, great, they're normal. So, you really want to actually set a baseline level if you can, and it might be worthwhile doing that before school really starts. I have to be honest, I am remarkably impressed with all our students here. Most of them navigated this with grace and poise. I'm sure there were some things underground going on, but not as much as we expected. The signs of anxiety and depression actually went down in most cases. And I think part of that was navigating the normal social channels was less. There was less expectation. So it was sort of like, why should I be depressed? Why should I be anxious? That's how I kind of internalize it, but it was really interesting. I wonder and worry about, for some of our kids, has being at home become actually a super safe place, that the outside becomes more angst provoking? What about, I was talking with my wife earlier today, what about friendships? Like we take it for granted that those friendships will be easily pick upable, but will they have really refined, will they pick up where they left off? So how to bridge that sort of thing. There's a tremendous amount of growth that can happen with some of those younger kids in just a few short months, and they can spread out. So helping them understand that, I think, is also part of our roles.
Great, thanks, Sean. Another question that sort of gets back a little bit to this prevention idea, but it's really thinking about that whole school community. So we've talked a lot about students, but how can we best promote well-being across different members of the school community, our parents, our faculty, and our students? And I don't know, maybe Sue, do you want to start us off with that?
Sure. Again, the idea of starting with any of these groups in August seems counterintuitive, right? And so a lot of the things that we've been doing started when we went into pandemic mode. So starting with, we called them Tuesday Tips, and they were little parent sessions, half-an-hour sessions, and it might be a specific 3 specific strategies that might boost relationships, so that we were teaching the parents strategies or practices that they would be able to talk to their kids about, because it's the sort of thing that we did with the kids, but also things that they could do to boost their own well-being. The conversations that happened from that really showed us that parents were struggling at home and guided what direction that we went. So I feel like anything where you're reaching out to parents to offer something education-wise also just gives you a view into what their needs are. So I would recommend that. For teachers, I just feel like we've really, the whole idea of differentiated instruction has just blown up now. The way that kids learn and the way that adults learn, we have to address that. So a weekly newsletter with links that teachers can look at, video, asynchronous videos, whether it's ones that we create or ones that we find. There are so many great websites right now that have things that are helpful for teachers as well. Having live sessions with all the employees to focus on well-being. Today at 11:30 for the staff who are still working, we have a Ridley Cafe that's just a drop-in. So having a variety of things, I think, is really important for the teaching staff. And we've already talked about a little bit about the students, but I'll pass it on to my colleagues.
Great. Anna Maria?
Yes, adding to what Sue was saying with the parents, one of the things that worked really well, and going back to the overload of emails that parents weren't reading, I started using WhatsApp through the PTA groups. I don't know if you, in your schools, you're using, they have PTA or parent groups on the WhatsApp page, so they gave the information out, but that's a great way also to send what Sue was saying, messages or a newsletter related to any of these topics we've been talking about, anxiety or stress, or more information about mindfulness, and also we created a NIDO, the counseling website, where the parents, we have a parent page, a student, and a student page, so they can also there on their free time or whenever they can go to the page, and we update that page. And then, like Sue was saying, we have videos, we have stories that they can read, or we have our own messages, videos from the counseling. And related to the teachers, I know someone set it up yesterday too, the wellness, we do a wellness afternoon sometimes. Someone was talking about anything. Teachers will teach anything from, pottery, cooking classes, Zumba, and that also helps the prevention piece a lot, and getting that connection with the teachers. And with the students, we get through the talent shows, parties, because then before we even start, we usually have a temperature check on how they're doing, and then you can build that program, your prevention program, with that.
Great. Robin? And then Sean.
I buzzed in right before you, Sean. These are great suggestions. I'm like writing over here. I'm going to be emailing you later, Sue, because I want some more information on that. But these are such great programs and information. And I just want to round it out by adding, never underestimate the power of just the human connection. When you get back in your buildings, even if you don't, even if you're still online, just being that person to pop into your teacher's room and say, how can I help? Or how's it going? And just being as approachable and open as you can. We can get into a discussion about boundaries and if you're only one counselor in a school, you need to be careful of how you use your services. And that's definitely a worthy topic. But I think we need to start with how can we use our counseling skills, the best skills that we have, which is listening and empathy, to be there. I had several teachers texting, WhatsApping me during the time of the quarantine, and just like, I need some tips. Like, this is hard, being a teacher and a mom and a wife, and and always my response is, I'm just so glad you got in touch. I'm just so glad that you're reaching out. And I got a message from a teacher an hour ago asking for some recommendations. So that to me helps me know kind of where my teachers are at emotionally, and it also just just having that human connection can be super, super powerful.
So important. Thanks, Robin. And Sean.
As far as sharing resources and, the idea of a newsletter, we worried about overloading our parents and our students with information. And so we tended to funnel things like many schools. We had a COVID website, very rich with lots of resources for people. But we did decide to do a parent newsletter from the high school counseling. And we used a program called MailChimp, which has a free version that you can use that's actually very robust. And the advantage it gives you is you can actually track who opened it, what links they clicked. And I want to stress this because I think things like email newsletters are a black hole. Does anybody actually look at them? Our school sends out a weekly newsletter, K to 12, and they have a click rate of 20%, which is to say 4 to 5 people aren't doing anything with that. I have my own theory why nobody's doing anything. When we initiated the high school counseling one, our click rate was almost 60%. Take that, marketing. But that was partly through an experiment, and I think we could get it to 80% with an easy tweak. But that's the sort of feedback that gives us information on how it's being used. And within it, whatever video we posted, whatever link we posted out, we could see what was resonating, what might be worthwhile. We also had a series of workshops ready for the spring around the university advising process, and obviously we ported those all online, but it lent itself to doing a recording, and we posted those on YouTube, and we're tracking those metrics to see how many people are actually watching and what's sort of the optimal length, because it's actually a lot shorter. It's really interesting how many people just leave these video presentations halfway through, and I'm like, no, the good stuff's coming up. That is to say, stick around, participants.
Thanks, Sean. I just wanted to reiterate what Sean said. I think trying to use some tools that will help you gather some metrics is really important, because it's sort of like sometimes you feel like you're casting this huge net out there and you're wondering what sticks, and actually being able to get some data on what's working is really going to help you improve your efforts and funnel your energy in the right direction. And so with that, I've noticed in the chat that lots of people are excited about the resources and wondering about when we're going to talk about them and how they're going to access them. So we're going to transition into sharing some resources. I will be sending an email to everybody who's registered on Zoom with links to all of these resources. If you are not with us on Zoom, if you're watching this later on YouTube, you can look in the description of the YouTube video, click show more, and the resources are going to be linked there. They are also linked on our Facebook page. All of these links are going to appear a couple hours after we finish today. And then finally, if you are in a place where you can't open YouTube as a platform or Facebook as a platform, on the PTC website, I have all of the videos linked through, and at the end of the week, there will be a button for the resources. So there's lots of different ways you should be able to access the great resources you are about to hear about. And so, Robin, I was hoping you could start us off and tell us about the exciting resources that you chose for today for our panelists.
Yes, thank you. So this happens to me quite a lot. I had an idea when Kristen said, send us a resource. I had an idea and I couldn't find what I wanted, and so I made a resource. But it occurred to me that I just made it myself. A lot of times, very often, the school counselor is the person where the caring adults will come to you, that the teacher or the administrator or the parent, with a child problem or a student problem. And those initial questions that we ask to get to sort of steer us in the right direction are really important. So I was wondering, is there some sort of checklist of questions you should make sure that you ask when you're even trying to figure out what needs to happen next? So I created one, and we're going to share it with you. And I tried to boil it down to just the really essential but good, juicy questions that I tend to ask that help me get at what I want to know. And then at the bottom of the list of questions is some additional resources. For instance, I made the questions into 3 categories, sort of behavioral. Often you'll be able to tell is this sort of a behavioral problem, a social emotional problem, or perhaps this is a parenting/family issue. And I have the questions geared toward those 3 areas. And then perhaps, for instance, in the behavioral, under the behavior questions, do you need to do a functional behavior assessment? But these are the questions that you would want. These are the types of questions you want to ask before you get there. In the social emotional questions, at the bottom, I've linked a resource to some anxiety and depression rating scales. But again, there's a lot of important questions and a lot of important information you need to gather before you get to that point. So given that we're often stopped in the hallway or the teacher just walks in your office, we don't have our intake forms ready. I just kind of wanted to make a cheat sheet, if you will. So that's one of the resources. And the other resource is a self-check-in. And I really like this because it is a self-check-in for helpers, but also for anyone. And it's just asking questions about how well you're taking care of yourself. I mean, we know this as counselors, we've heard it before, but it's always worth reminding that we have to take care of ourselves first. I think burnout, speaking from personally, counselor burnout is really hard to detect. It doesn't always look like I'm falling on the floor. Sometimes for me, it looks like I get short-tempered or I sort of, and then I go, oh, okay, I need something. But this is just sort of a check-in to ask you a variety of questions. Are you doing this? Are you doing this for yourself? And then it's at the bottom, it asks you to, within each domain, so we have spiritual, mental, physical health, choose one this week and focus on trying to increase that area of well-being in yourself. So yeah, those are my 2 resources.
Great, thanks, Robin. And Maria, could you choose 2 of the resources that you shared to talk about? I will share all of them with the group, but
yes. Of course. I'll say them real quick. It's great. Smiley Minds is a great website because why I like Smiley Minds is because you can go in and choose the age of the kids, and it has like different themes that you can choose from, and it's all there. They're short, so it's a great resource for also for teachers to use. So that's one. As parent workshops, I use Active Parenting. And again, I can, you can go to the website, but it's a great, of all the evidence-based programs that I've checked about parent workshop, that's, I think, top #1 right now. I love it. And then Go Zen, and Sue might want to add a little bit more on that one. First of all, I recommend you take the webinar they have right now. It's every day. I think they have 4 during the day, and it's only 1 hour, and you get great resources right there. In 1 hour, you are going to learn so much about dealing, how to help the kids with anxiety, and I think it has great tips. But apart from that, they have a special right now. You can buy the 7 or 5 to 7 programs they have in the different themes, and they're already there. And for I was talking to my counselors in the elementary school, they have great videos. So if we are going to continue working online, that would be a great resource to use as a social emotional learning. I don't know if Sue wants to add that one to that, and then the rest you have just Kristen will share them. Thank you, Kristen.
Maria. Sue. Great. Sue, let's have you go next.
Great. So GoZen, definitely. So GoZen has multiple programs. So GoZen is definitely about dealing with anxiety. It has Go Strengths, about how do you support kids to use their strengths, etc. It's all research-based, which I really love about it. They have partnered with the Flourishing Center, and the Flourishing Center is Amelia Zivotevskaya that I talked about, and she is offering, it's $30 for, just because the research says that if we don't pay for something, we're less likely to do it. So it's an hour a day, and it just started on Monday, and if you missed the first couple of days, it doesn't matter. It's meant to focus on strategies for us, but they are all very transferable, and the Flourishing Center also has a positive education certificate that I've taken that is, all it is research and practical strategies that you can use with your kids in your classroom. It's fantastic. I'd really highly recommend it. I did want to point out the VIA character strengths. So if you Google that, VIA character strengths, they have a survey for adults, but they also have a survey for youth or for teens. And knowing your character strengths, which again is based on a compilation of research down to the 24 character strengths that all cultures recognize. We all have all 24, but which are our strengths, and then using those strengths not only in times of challenge, but using those strengths to achieve, etc. It's really powerful for kids. It's not saying that we are not looking at areas that we need to grow in, or we're not looking at negative emotions. That's not what this is about. It's how do we actually use our strengths, though, to achieve. And then the last one is, I posted it, but Dr. Lee Waters, her Visible Wellbeing program is amazing, and there's some free stuff on her site as well. And it's based around a framework that the term being used today seems to be social emotional learning. You could be calling it character education, value education. We have the umbrella name of positive education, but all of those are reflected in the work that Dr. Lee Water does. That was me talking fast.
Great, thanks, Sue. And Sean, we'd love to hear about your resources.
Sure. So a couple, Therapist Aid is a website that has lots of worksheets that are ready to use. I see Robin giving it a big thumbs up. So when you're stuck and you're thinking there's something you want a kid to do, whether they're little kids or big kids, chances are Therapist Aid, somebody has posted something great in there. Social emotional learning has been a hot topic. If you want to take a little bit of a toe dip in a very powerful way, Emory University partnered with a gentleman named the Dalai Lama to come up with the social emotional learning curriculum called See, that's free. You need to register and you go through a modular training, but it will give you an idea that is quite positive. I also shared yesterday around Harvard's social emotional learning website. We'll post that one again, that breaks down into competencies and domains as a way of exploring social emotional learning. There was a question in the Q&A around, what's the best one? Well, I would step back and say, what are your goals? What are your hopes? What are your resources? A lot of the packages really have similarly overlap, but I think at the heart, the more you can embed it into the daily lives of the human beings in the building and the adults at home, that's where it gets really powerful. And then, do I do the gem now or no?
I'll introduce it and then you can do it.
Excellent.
All right. So as Sean alluded to, we do have a tradition at our Counselors Training Center, which is called our Counseling Gem. And the way that works is when we have our summer institutes, we always begin with morning meetings. And the morning meeting comes to a close with someone offering a counseling gem, which is typically somebody who's a participant in our course. Because we couldn't be together in person for our courses this year, we've asked our trainers to give our counseling gem. And since Sean was going to be the trainer for this course this summer, we've asked him if he would provide today's counseling gem. So Sean, you can take it away.
Thanks. So this started out as a result of a friend of mine being at a conference in February before the whole world shut down. It was Harvard and the Brain conference that happens, brain-based learning or something like that. I'm not sure where else learning happens, but I guess Harvard knows something. And they had I asked my friend, was there any speakers of quality that she saw? And she raved about this one person. So I got curious and Googled the person and found a book that I couldn't buy. Being on this side of the pond was frustrating. I did a little more Googling and discovered that she had an interview on a podcast. And I've been a huge consumer of podcasts for years, but mostly just for my own sort of curiosities. I never really connected it so much around the professional domain. And that started me on a very different journey. And I found all sorts of interesting podcasts, like in the realm of attention deficit disorder and executive functioning and, ones that would be suitable to recommend to parents, but ones that they're interviewing like the greatest practitioners, the leading thought people. Some of it gets into really heady science. Others of it's really grounded in just like practical, how to help people, whether it was depression, anxiety, and it was just like, oh my God, my gym workouts became these sort of weird, trippy. I listen to all my podcasts on double speed, so, it just makes it more engaging. So I put together a few links of some podcasts that were fantastic to kind of check out, both for your own sort of education as counselors and aspiring counselors, a few for parents. Love to hear if you have some of your favorites. That would be fantastic. So that's my gem. How did I do? I didn't have a necklace, but
I know we don't have the sparkly necklace for these virtual events, but that was fantastic, Sean. He's really curated a great list of podcasts for you. So just as a reminder, I will be sending an email to everybody who has registered on Zoom with a link to all of these amazing resources. The resources will also be posted on Facebook, and if you want to go back and watch this session, we'll be posting it on YouTube later today, and we will also link the resources there. And then finally, you can get links through the PTC website. At the end of this week on Friday, I will be posting curated resources from the entire week. So if you happen to miss a day, we'll have them all in one place for you. So I wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. I wanted to say a huge thank you to each of our panelists. Your expertise in the area of well-being and mental health and your passion for supporting that work in your school community, I think has really shown through in today's discussion. And it's been a real honor to be able to have you share your experiences with us. Tomorrow is going to be our final day for our virtual community week for counselors. And tomorrow's topic is going to be around university counseling. And I know that just given all of the uncertainty around the pandemic and what that means for how universities are going to operate, and then what those implications are for students in terms of getting student visas and application deadlines, and I know the list goes on and on, is going to lead us to a really important conversation. So we hope that, especially if you are a college counselor or working in high school, that this will be of particular interest and help to you. And we hope that everybody has a great day or evening or afternoon wherever you are in the world. So go forth and learn. And thanks for joining us. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.